The trade war is potentially coming to an end. You have Marco Mendicino, who didn't get the job he wanted working for Mark Carney, but not to worry because he might run for mayor of Toronto in the near future. I mean, it can't be any worse than Olivia Chow. I'll give you that. You also have Alberta separatism can be completely squashed at the snap of a finger by Prime Minister Mark Carney. So that's not good. And then you also have the complete loss of power from Mark Carney to Donald Trump. Everybody sees it. Everybody's talking about it. And so are we. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I do want to encourage you all to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It does really help grow the channel. And before we get into the news, I do have a message from today's sponsor. When I prepare my videos, I make sure that I know both sides of the story. That's why I use Ground News, and that's why I've partnered with them. Ground News is a website and app that pulls sources from thousands of different websites across the internet, organizes them by story, and shows you a visual breakdown of the political bias, ownership, and reliability. Take this story that's barely getting any attention to South Korea's bold arms deal to supply Canada with fighter jets and submarines instead of the United States. You'd think something like this would be on the front page, but apparently it's not. Ground News shows us that over 30 sources have covered the actual story. 67% of it is actually coming from the right. Left-leaning media outlets like CBC and Global News do cover the story, but they keep it surface level. Meanwhile, right-leaning outlets like 1945 dig deeper to point out the serious concerns about Canada's vulnerabilities. I actually found the story my favorite spot of Ground News, the blind spot feed, which is where I go to find out which side is or isn't covering the story. Subscribe to my link down in the description or use the QR code on screen to get 40% off the Vantage plan today. That's the exact same plan that I use. Thank you, Ground News, for sponsoring today's video. With that being said, let's now take a look at, you have the Ontario Premier, Doug Ford, is saying that he believes Mark Carney and Trump are going to reach an agreement and put a stop to the trade war very soon. Here we go.
There's new optimism from the Premier that Canada may be closing in on a trade deal with the U.S. Canadian officials have said the focus right now is dealing with immediate challenges and getting tariffs removed. The U.S. has slapped tariffs on all Canadian goods that aren't CUSMA compliant. There are extra levies on some cars, steel, and aluminum as well. But Doug Ford believes some relief is within reach.
They were negotiating last night. I'm going to be speaking to Minister LeBlanc today sometime to get an update, to find out how the talks are going. And I'm confident we'll get a deal, hopefully in the next month or so.
Potential changes to Canada's free trade deal with Mexico and the United States are not expected to be discussed in any detail until next year.
I will be completely honest with you. I wouldn't be surprised if it ends this quickly. I really wouldn't. Our relationship with America being over as we know it is not a real thing. It means that our relationship with America is going to likely be better than ever before. You're going to see more military integration. You're going to see more of the American economy integrated into the Canadian economy. You might see Verizon and other phone networks being sold in Canada. You might even see American banks like Klaus Schwab or whatever it's called, or Fidelity. All of those banks are probably going to start appearing in Canada at some point. So the elbows up crowd are 100%, I'm very certain, going to have buyer's remorse in the near future. Now, this isn't to say that these are bad things. I think the opposite. I think that these are phenomenal things. I think that they're long overdue. I think that integrating more of America into Canada is absolutely great. While, yes, still maintaining our independent sovereign country identity, yada, yada, yada. I get it. I don't want to be the 51st state, but I do want more integration of America stuff in Canada because it's just a lot better, and we shouldn't be putting up our elbows against America and trying to fight dirty. We should be trying to play with America the best we can, be the best neighbors, because they're the world superpower. And when shit hits the fan, which it eventually will, it's not a matter of if it does, it's a matter of when it does. We want to make sure that we are good on the best terms with America. Again, that's my opinion, folks. I would love to know yours. Next up here, we're going to take a look at Marco Mendicino. Used to be Justin Trudeau's right-hand man, then got thrown under the bus, lost a bunch of weight, and then was supposed to be Carney's right-hand man, except that's not the case. he's not actually working in Carney's cabinet, not chief of staff, not what he thought he was going to be doing. And it turns out that he actually has plans on what he's going to do post working for the Liberal government. Let's take a look at that.
In Ottawa, Marco Mendicino will be staying on for now as chief of staff for the Prime Minister. Mark Carney says the Toronto MP agreed to serve as chief of staff after the Liberal leadership race during the election and the subsequent transition. The PM says Mendicino will be staying into the summer to support the launch of the government's mandate in Parliament and lead the transition of the PMO. CTV News political commentator Scott Reed spoke about the possibility of Mendicino running for Toronto mayor when he leaves his current role.
I've had a couple conversations with him about it. I think what I would say, to be very blunt, really transparent, is that he's been urged to run for mayor. It's something he's considering. I think he's excited by the possibility, but I don't think and his wife may be watching this morning. So if I say that he needs to run for mayor, she may reach through the internet and strangle me. But I think it's on his mind. It's a strong possibility. And it just shows you that, there's a guy with some options.
Reid says it seems Mendicino is staying on as chief of staff for now because the Liberals need to staff up the Prime Minister's office. Reid also thinks Mendicino could opt for the private sector when he returns to Toronto.
It's just so weird seeing Mark Carney back in the news. It's bizarre. He was at the center of Canadian news during the Freedom Convoy and after the Freedom Convoy, up until he just basically disappeared into the wilderness. He just vanished off the face of the earth. Came back about 50 pounds, give or take, lighter, and is now disappearing once again. And I'll be honest, I don't like Marco Mendicino. I don't like what he stood for years ago with Justin Trudeau, and I don't think that he has changed as a human being since then. So with all due respect, it's time for you to retire, and good luck running as the mayor of Toronto. Sincerely, good luck. I mean, it can't get any worse than Olivia Chow. Not saying that I think he should be, but whatever. At this point, who really cares? Toronto's kind of gone anyways. No offense. I used to live there. It's just not the same. And speaking of not the same, the Alberta separatism movement might have just reached a full-fledged halt, which is very unfortunate, obviously. Mark Carney, it turns out, has the power to immediately stomp on the entire separatism movement. So they might entertain it for a little bit, but if push comes to shove, and eventually it kind of will, he could just stop it. Let's take a look at that piece.
Alberta's premier says Prime Minister Mark Carney has the power to squash a separatist movement. She made the remarks this afternoon as she wrapped up a meeting with her Western counterparts in Yellowknife. CTV's Evan Kenny joins us live in studio this evening with the latest. So, Evan, what did the premier have to say this afternoon?
Matt Smith, along with the premiers from BC, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and all three territories, have been in meetings for the past 2 days. All 7 premiers agreed Canada needs to find a new way of moving natural resources. Now, during an afternoon press conference, it was Smith who emphasized Prime Minister Mark Carney is the one with the ability to make this happen and keep Canada united. The premiers say they're focused on projects that create national unity, help build up the country, and transport Canada's natural resources to Europe and Asia. National unity has been on many people's minds, especially with Danielle Smith putting forward a bill to make it easier to call a referendum on separation. She says if the Prime Minister acts on the ideas that are coming out of this meeting, it would take the wind out of the sails of a separatist movement.
Talking about how we can help each other, how we can trade with each other, how we can work together to create new economic corridors so we can all get our various products to markets. And if we can find some support from the federal government on that, I think that's all that the people of Alberta have been looking for.
Last week, when CTV asked Mark Carney about his thoughts on building pipelines, he simply said yes and added building a pipeline is just one element of making Canada an energy superpower. All of Canada's premiers are scheduled to meet with the Prime Minister in just under 2 weeks on June 2nd.
Again, I'd love to know your guys' thoughts and comments down below about that. Do you think that that's even a real thing? Do you think that it's too big to rig? What are your guys' thoughts about the separatism movement? Let me know down below. Now we got to talk about the power shift, the very, very obvious power shift that's happening between Mark Carney and Donald Trump. It feels, not just in my own eyes and my own interpretation, that Mark Carney is losing power to President Trump. I think mainstream media sees it, and specifically CBC, specifically the bald guy from CBC. I guess the different balding guy from CBC. They replaced the other bald guy. Let's take a look at what he's got to say.
On a mission to deepen ties between our two countries, they met with the Prime Minister and the Ministers of Foreign Affairs, National Defence and Industry.
And we hope that this meeting will continue very positive discussions toward ensuring that some of the cracks that have appeared in the relationship in recent months are healed and we move forward together.
Those cracks in the Canada-U.S. relationship were something Prime Minister Carney spoke about with his cabinet at their retreat this week, a relationship that he says has changed forever.
We had, for almost half a century, we as Canada, a relationship with the Americans which were a steady process of deepening integration. And that process of deepening integration is over. We are in a position now where we cooperate when necessary, but not necessarily cooperate.
Carney also said his government may cooperate on U.S. President Donald Trump's Golden Dome, that multi-billion-dollar missile defense system.
In the campaign, I promised the American people that I would build a cutting-edge missile defense shield to protect our homeland from the threat of foreign missile attack. And that's what we're doing. And we'll be discussing Canada. They want to hook in and they want to see if they can be a part of it. It sort of makes sense. I guess that's what I was talking about from day one. You know, it just automatically makes sense. And it won't be very difficult to do, but they'll pay their fair share.
We'll see how the government is planning for all of this next week. The King will deliver the speech from the throne on Tuesday, laying out the government's priorities and kicking off a new session of Parliament.
I'd love to know your guys' thoughts and comments down below. And next week is going to be a very anticipated week. On Monday, House of Commons resumes. There's a big swearing-in ceremony. And yes, I'm going to be finally doing CPR to House of Canada YouTube channel. It's back, baby. The streams are coming back. So if you're looking for question period next week, make sure you click the link down below in the description to the House of Canada YouTube channel. Subscribe and sit and wait patiently for that stream to pop up on your feed. So again, to reiterate, the mainstream media is really not, I don't want to say they're not respecting Mark Carney's role in politics right now when it's in discussion with Donald Trump, but everybody realizes, even our own mainstream media realizes that if you talk about Mark Carney and Donald Trump, it's not even a debate or a question as to who's wearing the pants and who's in control, even of our own country, for crying out loud. Before Mark Carney was even able to publicly announce that we are having a Golden Dome, Trump voluntold Canada, saying they're gonna pay their fair share and we're gonna have the greatest security. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, again, phenomenal idea. But did he take it up with our boss first, or did he just announce that on behalf of Canada for Canadians? I don't know. But let's take a look now at the next piece where CBC is realizing that it doesn't really matter what Mark Carney says. The only thing that matters is what happens in the Oval Office.
These meetings here in Ottawa, Melanie, do you think these kinds of ministerial working groups between the ministers and the senators, how much do they matter when we know it's all going to be decided by one guy back in the Oval Office?
That's a good question. And a guy in the Oval Office that changes his mind every day.
A lot.
A lot. So yeah, I guess when you consider that, it's hard to take them at value that they matter. But I think they do matter. I think building relationships is important. There is, we talk a lot about state to province, but I think, elected official to elected official, that's also really good. Building relationships, showing, for folks who may not already have a relationship with people here in Canada, why it matters that relationship continues, how it impacts them with the breakdown in the relationship. So I do think the more allies we can have south of the border, the better. And I would say bipartisan allies as well, which is really important, so that we have allies with both the Republicans and the Democrats, because we know that Donald Trump is more likely to listen to, well, I don't know if he is actually going to listen to any of them, but more likely to listen to
for
some,
sure. And
more than others.
Again, I mean, that's just, it's sad. It's sad that our prime minister, like, as much as I don't like Carney, the fact that he's just not even respected, our own prime minister, never mind the guy, but the title is not respected by other countries, specifically America, goes to show just how weak Canada truly is. Now, would it be different under a separate party government? Like if the Conservatives were in power, would Pierre Poilievre have a little bit more respect from Trump than what Carney does? Who is to say? I'd like to say yes, but again, doesn't even really matter right now because that's not what's happening in front of us. But I'd love to know you guys, what you guys think about everything that's going on. Even the mainstream media is really realizing that it doesn't matter what Carney says to the press. It doesn't matter what he says or does here in Canada. All that matters for Canada is what's said in the Oval Office. And that, ladies and gentlemen, concludes this video. I'd love to know what you guys think down below in the comments. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns about any topics that were provided. And again, if you haven't yet already, I'd like to encourage you guys to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in another video. Bye for now.